Hello and welcome to Financial Technology Frontiers, North America. Friends, we are in for a very interesting conversation around what is happening in the world of inclusive fintech. And as we all know, there is a wonderful event being organized around inclusive fintech, this time by none other than Elevandi, which is also the organizer of the world's largest fintech festival, the Singapore Fintech Festival. And with me today, I have Mr. Pat Patel, who is one of the pillars behind the Elevandi group, and he has been organizing this entire discussions, forums, and creating large forums where people associate, engage, enroll, and transact with each other. Please join me together in welcoming Mr. Pat Patel. Pat, welcome to Financial Technology Frontiers.
Thank you so much, Babu. It's great to be on here and great to see you again. It's been so many years.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pat. So, Pat, you have been doing a great work in the Singapore FinTech Festival. And now we see a great movement from you in the area of doing an inclusive fintech forum. So I just wanted to understand a little bit about what is the reason for Elevandi and Singapore in forming a partnership with Rawanda to hold this inclusive fintech forums. What is your entire game plan behind this activity?
Sure. So it's a part of the world that we've been involved in for some time now. So way back in 2019, we worked with the government of Kenya and we ran a forum there to bring parts of the community together and build a corridor between Southeast Asia and Africa. This time around, we've decided to partner with the government in Rwanda, in particular, the Kigali International Finance Center. And so for us, I think a lot's happened over the last kind of 5 years in the story of Africa and its fintech journey. And a lot of it now has moved from experimentation to implementation. And so that is a big part of the dialogue. And when we talk about implementation, it's really around products and services, it's around infrastructure that can really help the public and the private sector to flourish. And I'll come on to this a bit later, but it's around those digital public goods. So, as you know, in India, there is the amazing India stack, but very few countries outside of India and even Singapore have this stack in place, which allows for new products and services to be developed by the private sector. And so that's kind of going to be a big dialogue that kind of happens. And we feel that that's really important. I think, for what we see also is it's around inclusion, clearly, because there are, I think there's 1.4 billion people unbanked or underbanked. And a lot of these are in the global south. So whether that's Africa, whether that's LATAM, or even kind of South and Southeast Asia. And so there is a great opportunity here to kind of really advance the thinking. And so we see this as a way to bring communities together, like-minded people within the fintech scene from across the global south to come together and really think through and share some of the great ideas that's going on in the different regions and hopefully partnerships as well. So that's kind of where we're coming from on this. And we see this as a way to promote and develop inclusive fintech, because fintech over the last few years has been focused on set verticals, whereas we feel that there is a greater opportunity here to really build out and take the whole inclusion narrative to the next level. And this will be what we're looking to do in Rwanda, but clearly Rwanda is just the destination. It's the whole of Africa, it's LATAM, and it's South and Southeast Asia.
Wonderful. I think that's a very noble kind of intention to bring growth and inclusion into the African market, and not only Africa, but globally for that matter, because Africa has also been taking a lot of interesting initiatives in the area of inclusion. Now, you spoke rightly about the India stack, and you also spoke about the infrastructure that is required for financial inclusion in the African market. So from your perspective, your research, your understanding, what are the kind of technology, infrastructure or rails that are required, or what exactly is required to power this market and take the financial inclusion to the next level?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And one of the things that we see is that fintech in Africa is going to reach around about 30 billion over the next few years. And so there is this explosion of new products and services. Technology is becoming more pervasive, so it allows, entrepreneurs and founders from across the region to start experimenting and solving real problems. But for us, the digital public goods is so important here. And so when we talk about digital public goods, it's the four key pillars. It's the digital identity layer, coupled with an interoperability of payments and payment systems. Then on top of that, as you know, you have the data exchange, which is for financial and non-financial information, so it can flow around the economy. And then the last lens is the consent architecture, which has always been a challenge in a number of markets to get quite right. And so when you have those four areas, it forms the fundaments of any digital economy. And once you have that, it enables fintechs, but it enables corporates and even governments to start building and providing services or solutions in a cost-effective but also seamless way to the end customer, whether it's an SME, whether it's a corporate, whether it's even a consumer. And so now that technology has reduced the barriers to entry or even the cost to serve, it enables a greater kind of price point to the end consumer and customer, but also enables that reach across multiple markets. And so that leads us to another area where we believe that, very few fintechs in Africa have managed to scale across all the key markets in Africa, or even scale across other regions in the world. But we're beginning to see a few of them now starting to happen. And one great company is one called Move, which has started in Nigeria. It monetizes the relationship between the ride-hailing company and the driver. And so what they've managed to do is very great. They're leveraging data from these ride-hailing companies and providing lending products to the driver. And so they've managed to scale in a number of markets in Africa. They've even managed to go to Europe, and they're scaling into India and other parts of Asia. And I think that's a great success story. And, as it were, a champion, which can hopefully lead to other companies across Africa starting to do the same. And what we see as the Inclusive Fintech Forum is to support that journey, not just for those that are making that ground, but the next wave of entrepreneurship. And one of the things we're going to be doing at the Inclusive Fintech Forum is launching a number of courses that supports the entrepreneurial community to start to move beyond some of the barriers and hurdles that they're facing. And that's why we brought in a number of presidents and governors and senior kind of politicians to come into the event, so they can start to also help remove some of these hurdles and barriers and make it easy for companies to scale within the domestic market, but also across multiple markets in Africa and other regions.
Interesting. In fact, if you observe the African market closely, I think they have been pretty encouraging, or they have been pretty welcoming to all those technology developments that have been taking place in different parts of the world. And they have been quite inquisitive to adopt some of these technologies within their own frameworks and things like that. And I'm sure that there will be a lot more partnerships and a lot more collaborations that would take place. Are there any particular collaborations or any particular partnership initiatives that you envisage would happen during this Inclusive Fintech Festival in this African market?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And so we see partnerships and collaboration happening at that infrastructure level. So we have the Gates Foundation and one of their organizations called Moduloot that's worked quite closely with the governments in India. And so we see a number of partnerships happening in terms of infrastructure. That's the digital public goods. We see potential opportunities for building a capital markets infrastructure in Africa, which has been quite light in recent history. But we see that as an opportunity to bring in more investments into the region. And then we kind of see, when you think about payments, you think about lending, you think about some of the micro-based products, whether it's insurance or pensions, we will start to see some collaborations happening there as well, because there's been a lot of great work going on in India and Southeast Asia around some of these micro-based products, that I think there is certain relevance for collaboration or even inspiring new companies to design and develop micro-based products across Africa that can leverage some of the advancements we're seeing in other jurisdictions in the world. So that's kind of how we see it, an infrastructure play, but we also see it in some of the verticals. So payments is obviously the biggest vertical in fintech. So we'll see some collaborations occurring there. We'll see the micro-based products. And even, the whole concept of a super app, which started in this part of the world, in Asia, that has gained a lot of traction, starting from China, moving across Southeast Asia. India has its own variant of the super app as well. And so, it's quite a unique phenomenon in Asia for the concept of a super app. And we see that there are organizations beginning to look at aggregating services in one kind of place for consumers. And this is happening in Africa and obviously LATAM as well. And so I think there is a great opportunity for that cross-pollination of ideas, but also approaches. And so what we'll see is some partnerships emerging, but we'll also see some, that learned experience being shared, or learned knowledge being shared to communities in Africa and also LATAM as well.
Interesting. I think there is a whole lot of thing to be done, right from the infrastructure. I think open banking is also going to play a very important role in this financial inclusion game. And of course, you have highlighted the role of super apps and most of the technologies that have been coming from Asia, which will flow on to the African market. And anything that you have been doing, you have always been celebrated for the world's mother of all fintech festivals, that is the Singapore Fintech Festival. And you have been creating content for that. And I'm sure you will definitely have a lot more that you would take back from this International Fintech Festival to culminate into the larger stage of Singapore Fintech Festival. What do you expect? What kind of collaboration do you expect between both these events? And how do you see this contributing in a larger way to your objective of the Fintech Festival?
Yeah, no. So, as a non-profit organization, we are driven differently than most other kind of fintech events or gatherings. We actually don't see ourselves as an event organizer. For us, we convene the right people to drive change. That is what we do. And we do this by bringing the public sector, so heads of state, governments, policymakers, regulators, together with the industry. And so this year, we have a platform in Europe, which is a policy technology dialogue with the Swiss government, where we convene policymakers, regulators with the tech industry. And then obviously what we're doing in Africa around inclusion. So the way we see this is bringing the dialogue, bringing the communities from not just Africa and LATAM, but also from Europe, bring that all together at the end of the year to the Singapore Fintech Festival, which then advances the conversations we've had earlier on in the year. And so for us, that's really important, because you can't just have one snapshot conversation in a calendar year. There needs to be, a thread that moves, but also has a purpose and an intent. And so a lot of the dialogues that will happen in Africa around inclusion and around kind of these verticals within fintech around inclusion, what we'll look to do is take the threads of those, take the right people as well, bring them across to Singapore, and really push forward that dialogue. So what have we achieved for example, in the infrastructure play? How can we move that forward? What have we achieved in terms of micro-based products, or micro insurance, or micro pensions, or even payments? How does that now move on towards the next level of that dialogue? So it's all about advancing the industry. And, one of the things I've always, preached to myself is that, to be on the edge of where the industry is, on the edge of what we currently know as a community. And that's the piece where, we are focused on moving those boundaries forward. And that takes people coming together, that takes the right ideas, but also the right execution. And that's the bit that we're super excited about. And we're looking forward to taking the threads of these discussions and the smart people from these conversations and bringing them to Singapore to create that change that we want to see in the world ourselves.
Wonderful. I think you have a very noble intention and a very noble kind of roadmap laid out. for the entire financial sector and the fintech sector to come together. Thank you very much, Pat, for being a part of this wonderful conversation, and wish you all the best in making it a super duper success.
Thank you very much, Babu, and look forward to welcoming you and your community to Singapore at the end of the year.